Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our event. My name is Yuliia Hnat, and I represent the NGO, the Museum of Contemporary Art, together with our colleagues who are present today with us. We have been working together all last year on the document which is called Navigating the War as Artists in Ukraine Practical Resource. And what we would like to start with, in the times of political turbulence, the artists played a crucial role to record and document the events. The artists demonstrate the culture, narratives of the nation, and consolidate us. And this document started with being inspired by Safety Guide for Artists, and it was created by artists at Risk Connection, and it was the Safety Guide for Artists, and it helps to get better and survive in times of war, psychologically, mentally, and physically, in the internal context of the country where there is the war, aggression of Russia, and beyond the country. And from our perspectives, what we have experienced, Ukrainian artists, and if we speak about the cultural personalities, we can see that we challenge the abstract notions and the geopolitical events, and we can have in this work the human dimension and sense and it's tangible, this human dimension in this work. And this document is really up to date, and artists are the first line in the fight for truth, resistance, and collective memory. Those voices are really strong. First of all, because it's about documenting, advocating, creating space for difficult discussions, and it's always a question of whether there is space, whether we have the space for difficult discussions during war, when it is the hard phase, or should we only focus on mobilization? But Ukrainian experience, what we can observe, we hold this space. And we have this space, we have the possibility to discuss different rough topics. And it's a really important summary what we have come to surviving the experience in Ukraine. And the Emergency Support Fund, and in March 2025, it was launched, and it's based on best practices, and it's important to continue this work. And one of the key conclusions of our guideline is that Ukrainian artists are not the passive survivors of the war. They are the active agents of resistance, and they help us understand this black and white reality of the war, and they also contribute to our resistance. And this work demonstrates the price of the political decisions in human dimension. It challenges the apathy, it mobilizes the support and solidarity. This guideline was intended as an instruction for survival, but it's also about being agents. It's about being clear in our thoughts when in times of uncertainty. And it was my introduction, and I would like to summarize what I've mentioned before I give it over to my colleagues. Thank you, Artists at Risk Connection. Thank you for being our fellow people, for sharing our opinions, and thank you for helping us to implement this vision that we have intended to have in this guideline. And thank you, Ukrainian Institute, for your collaboration and the research agents in the hub, and thank you, Mr. Lamkin, and thank you for Tenefieska, director of the Ukrainian Institute, director of ARC. Thank you, dear artists. Thank you for providing us, the artists, for all the paintings and pictures which we have placed in this guideline. Lisa, it's over to you. Thank you, Yuliia. Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Korneichuk, and I'm the art journalist and the editor and the proofreader of this edition, navigating the war as artists in Ukraine, a practical resource. I would like to represent you this publication. This was celebrated with the efforts of many people. In joint efforts, we managed to do this. We have been working more than a year on this work, and the experience of war in Ukraine has become a routine, a sort of routine, and it became really tiresome, exhausting. And I would say this the post-adrenaline period, or the period when we started experiencing this catastrophe, and we can come to some conclusions. We are ready to put into archive now our memories and experience, and we tried to collect different cases in this guideline. I would like to speak about the format, the conceptual parts, the level logic we had in this work, what this publication is. Conceptually, it's based on two interconnected levels, internal and external levels, where there are mentioned key aspects of war. Internally, meaning survival in times of danger, physical security, support mental health, evacuation, and access to basic resources available here. And the professional challenges, if we speak about evacuating the art pieces, preserving them, storing them, it's about being active, it's about political resistance, civil resistance on the theater of art, and in the field of social life and initiatives. The external level is about the challenges faced by the artists beyond the country. It's about preserving your agency, and it's about being the subject, and it's about strengthening the connections abroad, and it's about a peer-to-peer level. And it was really important for us to speak about the challenges the artists face as the artists from the country in war. So it's about overcoming the poor representation, colonial hierarchy, combating this, and still it's present in international institutions. We also discussed the threat of ghetto identity in art, and we talked about cliche and the artist as the victim. We talked about this, and it's about preserving the focus upon the cultural context and representation of this context. The methods we used: in-depth interviews, focus group discussions, and interviews and surveys, which helped us to collect as many cases and experiences as possible. This publication consists of a few structural elements which exist simultaneously, and reading this publication is possible not only in simply one flat line, but it's possible to read between the lines. And here we speak about the experiences and challenges of the artists in Ukraine, but also here we collected the tools, which are the instruments or checklists with instructions, useful links, and knowledge bases with the practical recommendations. And this work also encompasses cases, how to or actions or happenings about demonstrating how Ukrainian artists make their decisions. There are very many quotations, voices, and thoughts of our contributors. They demonstrate the diversity of the positions, stances around different controversial scenes in times of war. And at the same time, there is another category more containing external links to similar projects. It is sort of an archive of media and stories demonstrating everything what is happening in the artistic society, demonstrating demonstrating what the artists do, their activities, about their life in times of war. It's about the artist's life in Ukraine. So maybe I would like to shortly demonstrate to you the content. It consists of 5 main sections, and they move from internal to external, from questions about life in times of occupation, under-occupation, in times of attacks, constant attacks, about evacuation, about threats, about career challenges, about continuing your artistic career. It's about evacuation, it's about searching for resources, it's about resistance, artistic resistance, and it's about changing your activity and your occupation, and it's about the professional and public representation, and about decolonization, ethical challenges, political challenges the artists face. And I also would like to mention what this publication has not coped with, and it's an important thing for us. When working on this guideline, we understood that we cannot give comprehensive instructions how to survive. But giving instructions, it means that we contradict the Timothy Moulton notion that hyperobject and war is the hyperobject. And these are the things that it's difficult to perceive physically. So these are the phenomena happening simultaneously, and they are prolonged in time and space, taking place in different locations, and they change our life in different ways. So we cannot sense all of the levels of this hyperobject and war is the hyperobject, and war is more than just one dimension. It's more than just occupation or just air raid sirens or mass immigration and immigration, and we should speak about things that there are things that we cannot realize, perceive, or understand. So given any guidelines how to live in war, it means to limit yourself and thinking that we can describe the full scale of war. So we cannot describe the war in all of its dimensions. So here we should say that no resource or publication can be comprehensive, responding to all of the challenges people face. And it's really important for us to switch the focus from giving some instructions or recommendations in moving towards voices to demonstrate the experiences. And maybe that's the peculiarity of the structure of this publication, that it prioritizes personal voices, personalities, individuals, and their experiences. So we invited people to contribute their experience into this project, and we invited different people. And the names of these people you can see on the screen. We're extremely grateful to these people for joining us, because these are the people who face different challenges in the first days and years of full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine. And we had different trajectories, but they are really similar to their colleagues' trajectories, and all our pathways are unique, even though they may remind each other. So the war changes the world at different levels, and that's the event and the circumstances when people have to take sometimes intuitive decisions, movements, actions, and that's the strategy of survival. We cannot foresee or forecast what will happen in times of war. That is why for if we speak about security, some of the recommendations would go beyond the trivial understanding of security. It's not just physical security. And our goal in this work was to expand this notion of security and speaking more than about physical security, but we were speaking about the artistic security being attacked and how to preserve security in such conditions. And let's discuss the art pieces which we have mentioned in our work. They are the pieces from the collection from UNCA, and they are provided by the artists to support the initiative Artists at Risk Connection, Safety Guide for Artists, and these are the works created in 2024 around this year, and it's about thoughts of the society, what worried us, what our troubles were, and these are not the illustrations about the guidelines, these are the parallel archive of our life, emotional one, and it demonstrates what happened to us, what is happening to us today. So that's the art that is not inseparable from the crisis, and we cannot stop art even in such horrible circumstances. And as for the cover piece, we used the work of from Kind album Ecocide. It was their response to the explosion of Cahonkadem, and it caused a huge eco catastrophe, and the consequences are still uh, they still cannot be completely estimated. So this is the resource that cannot encompass absolutely everything. It's not a resource for the last life, but it's about demonstrating everything that happened. For example, in this picture, we can see that all of the levels are of this catastrophe from the picture. It impacts all of the elements of our life. And why this work, this masterpiece, is also important because it's a metaphor to the artistic society. It's a metaphor, like we, like artists, keep going, keep working, and we keep working and living, and it's one another more way to say thank you for we can continue living. And why this concept is still up to date, we can see that there is the destabilization of global systems in our news feeds. We can observe this, and it may seem to us that all our knowledge and methods and experiences are getting out of date. But many of us, and I will speak on my own, but about myself. But I believe you may share this perplexion, maybe this anxiety when you felt desperate lost, and that's the time when it's important to speak, when the systems of exchange and transparency and collaboration have been ruined. So it's important to exchange, to say this. We have the English and Ukrainian version of this work. So the main purpose is that we would like to create the space to share the knowledge on the paper. And here we emphasize on experiences, stories, and cases. So when people they shared their life at the edge, on the edge. So we cannot simply Google and get this knowledge. So this book is the real great resource as our speakers shared the experiences and we have it here. And it's really important to learn their challenges and learn their lesson. So to get ready to the challenges in the future and now. In crisis circumstances, solidarity can should be the practice in place, and those who survive the crisis require not only the support and assistance, they also can share the experience with others and their lessons learned with others, how to survive this. And this is the knowledge that is the most precious, that really brings current this work. And we hope that the artists from beyond Ukraine will take this experience into consideration as the possibility to get ready to the crisis and to prevent such a crisis. So that's it from my side, and I'm open to answer your questions. Thank you.
Ліза, дякую.
Lisa, thank you.
В тебе таку
And
перебираю ілюзорну естафетну
and I'm taking it over from you. Now I occupy the stage myself. But after such Yulia's and Lisa's intro, it's really difficult to add something. And I want to breathe out and I would like to add some off top. After last Friday, many people started watching different YouTube materials, and they could suddenly see that there are no regular things they used to. And it appeared that all of the episodes of Ukrainian international bloggers recorded on Friday morning suddenly on Friday evening were outdated, and they had to record their videos again, to re-record their work. So what Lisa has mentioned live, and she said that this the embodied knowledge. So we have the embodied knowledge, the knowledge and experience of the witnesses of it all. So we can agree or disagree with this point, but the most important thing is to keep communicating. And the technical issue is, and I would like to remind you that our discussion is going to take place in English and Ukrainian. So just in case you've joined recently, please select on the toolbar in Zoom, select the language you would like to participate, and one more symbolic intro.
I need to know that we all have the opportunity to live in Ukraine because thanks to the armed forces of Ukraine and the solidarity with our allies and partners. So thank you I would like to thank all those who helped us to do so. My name is Illia Zabolotnyi. I'm co-founder of the Emergency Art Fund, and also engaged in the strategic programs such as that was described by Lisa. We also implemented Reconnection EA program together with UNESCO, and we're working on together with the International Development Renaissance Fund, Interact initiative, and so with these words, I'm going to start our micro discussion with the very important guests. And unfortunately, we see them online, but at least we see them online. Aliyev, deputy head of the journalist, co-founder of the Cream Sauce and Cream House. Alim doesn't have much time to spend with us, so let's start with him. But let me introduce our other panelist, Yuliia Trébault, Executive Director of Artists at Risk Connection, independent organization that protects and promotes the freedom of express. And so also, and our publication would be just part of the kitchen talks, but thanks to Yuliia, we are present here and now. Thanks to her, and the next panelist is representative of the UNESCO Fund for and Heritage Emergency Fund. She helped to implement a lot of UNESCO initiatives after the beginning of the big war, and artist and co-founder of the Fortunate Studio. Max is preparing something for us as a headline of this presentation. So I wish everyone an inspiration and stamina to stay till the very end of this meeting. Alim, I don't want to repeat myself, and I want to repeat what was said by our colleagues. Yeah, we lived in the destroying normality. We in front of us is the map called uncertainty, unpredictability. So how can we get along without the navigator? So before we start talking about some serious stuff, let me ask a question to all of us panelists. But we will start talking with Alim. So how do we feel, Alim? Just imagine that you came back to your apartment, your home, or maybe your parents' house. You looked into the room. With a lot of objects, tools, something that is very familiar for you. What would you take? How could you explain the symbol of the time that we're existing in? Good evening, colleagues. First of all, thank you for this extremely necessary, guide that performs several functions. First, it helps to advocate us abroad. It also functions as the provide the support to artists. And there is another function which is not very obvious, but at first, but it can be used as well, and that is as a navigator for those societies that unfortunately in the future will experience similar conflicts and wars. So let me set a bridge and answer your question regarding what would I take from what would if I could touch something in my room. I just remembered my toys from my childhood, and parts of the toys. So I have toys of the so-called white heroes and dark heroes, and so I would like to make sure that barbarians and bandits will be overcome by forces of light. Great idea. And so continuing our metaphorical intro, in our guide, Stanislav Torina, the artist, used a Chinese metaphor and saying that in times of great changes and winds, you need to build windmills. In order so it's necessary to build windmills to master the winds and not to build walls. So you're quite fruitful at in Ukrainian Institute. This is the public institution. So could you please give us, an idea on what are the recipes and the challenges that to make sure that Ukrainian culture would be permanent partner at the global arena and not just the object of one-time attention when some emergency time occur. So what would you add to the narrative of Ukraine? Thank you for your question. I totally agree with the statement, and that building bridges between Ukraine and other countries was one of our key tasks. And today, when we live in the times of getting back our own names, both in Ukraine and outside of it, it's extremely important task because when we build of bridges of cooperation, we build trust, but we know pretty well that it takes time to build trust, but it can be easily destroyed. So today key priorities for Ukraine Institute, if we talk about building trust and a better understanding of Ukraine, partnership of Ukraine with other countries, then we try to have several key priorities and approaches. Firstly, is how we changed since 2022, since the full-fledged invasion. So the key priority now is to present Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian voices at big international platforms. I can just recall Guadalajara Book Fair and Cannes Film Festival, and so we include the voices of Ukrainian artists into the global international processes. Secondly, we started to expand significantly the geography of our cooperation, and we started to work with those countries that with whom we never found any, mutual resources or connections. So here we have assistance from our society, and also so I meant the countries of Asia and Latin America, because so they have almost have no idea about Ukraine. So when we'll try to build this our subjectivity international platforms, we have to build new connections and new ties with the host countries and societies that we have never done anything like that before. And the greatest insight that we have much more in common than it seems at first glance. And then decolonization of knowledge of Ukraine by enhancing Ukrainian and Crimean Tatar studios. We do it together with the found of the Crimean platform and the Foundation of President for Science and Education. We are the drivers of the global coalition on Ukrainian studies. I'm talking about enhancing Ukraine's voice in academic realm. We horizontal connections between the artists is something that we have to strengthen through residences, through workshops, through a program of visits for artists, for journalists, bloggers, philosophers, writers, etc., etc. See, this way we're not just preparing our ambassadors for those countries, but also we help to build ties with the partners that are in our country right now. So counteracting disinformation, it is something we need to do in the future. I mean, studying the impact of Russian propaganda, so-called Russian misinformation, disinformation, and so-called cultural diplomacy. It's I mean, the statement of Ukraine is to stop cooperation with institutions that have ties with the Russian regime, and this is obviously the last, but and it's very important is the stories of Ukrainian artists about the experiences that we broadcast abroad, and this is something that helps to build trust between us. And finally, we as the public institution, and I as Mr. Aliyev, personally, I'm sure that we will walk this way, and we'll become a part of the European Union, and we need to, through these horizontal ties and through interinstitutional ties and through inter-artist, connections, we need to approximate Ukrainian cultural policies and European cultural policies. Thank you, Alim. Okay, we won't keep. So yes, unfortunately we cannot keep you any longer. Yeah, I do apologize for this, but thank you for being here. And another very important, another important statement, that the trust is built through relationship and not through transactions. Although in geopolitical reality, we see that, on the contrary, the transactions all of a sudden become something extraordinary important that can, ruin the institutions that have been working for years and years. And at this point, I'm building a bridge overseas, and let me remind you about the availability of interpretation, and which is much more important is that if you have any questions, please write to chat right now. At the end of our meeting, we'll have couple of minutes for speakers to become yours in terms that they will be able to answer questions. And now I would like to talk with Julie, and for this purpose I will switch to English.
Julie, glad to have you with us. It's like evening in Kiev, and I think busy day morning in New York. So great to see you with us. Let's start with that metaphor question, because I think it's the key of how you are feeling now in New York.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Illia, and welcome everyone. Thank you for your kind words, all of you, and I'm very happy to be here. I think it's a very important and timely discussion. As Illia said, I'm Julie Trébault. I'm the Executive Director of the Artists at Risk Connection, ARC, which is an international organization dedicated to promoting and defending artistic freedom worldwide and help and support artists and cultural workers in danger. So on your metaphoric question, Illia, I think if I'm going to kind of the storage where, I will have left in my parents' house in France all my childhood memories, I think I will probably take one of the, old radio that we have in the 80s and a slightly broken radio with kind of static interrupting the signal. I think for me, it really represents today's world where there is an overwhelming flow of information, kind of this constant connection, but also very noisy, very uncertain and distorted. I think tuning in feels harder than ever, much like our search for clarity in this chaotic time. So I think I'll do this slightly broken radio.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect metaphor that also, I think we all have that radio in our apartments now over the globe in a way. And my question to you will be kind of strange, may sound kind of strange, but I think it's very interesting to hear from you on what is your vision on that. So you are chairing, you're executive director of organization that has two very powerful words in its title: artist and risk. First, small part of triggering question. So for you and for your colleagues, why you are in an organization that is called artists at risk, not, I don't know, managers at risks or workers at risks or bartenders at risks? So what is that essence that sets artists in the center of your work? And second part of that question is that what we feel and felt as Ukrainian Emergency Art Fund in Ukraine, that at some point of full-scale invasion, some kind of like emergency solidarity stopped. A need of reconfiguration of that appeared, and reconfiguration to some
They face persecution, censorship, violence, attack, whether from state or non-state actors. And I think through our work, we have witnessed firsthand how artists not only express, but also shape the realities of our world. I think in time of crisis, their voices become even more essential. So on the support, really going to your second question about supporting Ukrainian artists in crisis and during the war, I think when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the cultural sector was profoundly impacted as it quickly became very clear that Russia's campaign was about more than just subsuming Ukraine's territory. It was also about destroying Ukraine's national identity and cultural heritage, and about really targeting the people in infrastructure that protected, which means like artists and cultural organization in Ukraine. And I think for us, it was important to really to take action. And we were very fortunate that with the support of two foundations, the Ellen Franken-Teller Foundation and the Andy Warhol Foundation for Visual Arts, we could, with partner on the ground and really led by Ukrainian organization and Ukrainian expert, establish this emergency and resilience fund for Ukrainian visual artists, which play kind of a lifeline for those forced to flee, those staying under siege, and those working to preserve Ukrainian culture in the face of destruction. So in a nutshell, since starting this initiative, we really did start it immediately in May 2022, and thanks to our wonderful regional representative for Ukraine, Alexandra Yakubenko, who is in the call with us today. Sasha was, I'll go for Sasha for Alexandra, and Sasha was able to provide over 500,000 US dollar in emergency grants, supporting more than 430 artists and more than 800 of their dependents. So helping them with relocation, travel, food, and shelter. But our commitment goes beyond the survival. We were also awarding resilience grants, totaling nearly to $76,000 to 61 artists, to enable them to continue their creative work despite displacements and loss. So I think the war's impact on the art community in Ukraine has been devastating, to say the least, and that was, really clear when we start, really helping on the ground Ukrainian artists. I want to give you some kind of reflection of artists that have been supported through this grant-making initiative, from enabling painter Mykolai Kaidan to rebuild his artistic practice in exile by purchasing like quality materials and digital equipment. We support multimedia artist Mykolai Ray in using digital activism to counter disinformation during the occupation of Kherson. And so like those kind of little example of the impact of the grant that show how it is instrumental to have direct support and resources in sustaining artists' creative voices. I think these artists, and going back to your first question, and so many other are not just witnesses to a story, they are shaping it. Their work carries the spirit of Ukraine, ensuring that its culture, its identity, its artistic voices not only endure, but thrive. So I think we, as ARC, but also as the international community, stand with them. We should continue to stand with them in this really chaotic time. And I feel supporting artists is not just about preserving culture. It's about defending freedom, defending truth, and the right to create. And I might stop here because, Illia, you might have other questions. I have also really kind of key lessons on your second question about, what we learn, what we feel is needed and how we can help. But maybe you want to give the floor to Anaïs. So let me know how you want to handle that.
Yeah, we are definitely not stopping our Zoom now, so we will have time a bit later. Thanks a lot for your answers, and again, that metaphor of radio really, works in my head as a perfect symbol. I totally agree with you, and also I'm noting this, that artists are not only to reflect but to shape the reality. And in a way, it's what we really felt here in ground on Kiev since 24th of February, when we, literally, physically understood that erasure, stop and pause of Ukrainian culture is one of primary targets of what is Russia is doing in its imperial aspirations, in its warfare. So it's not a collateral damage to culture. It's one of the core tasks, of what Russia wants to do with Ukraine. And because of help of such, I would say almost like horizontally connected institutions like ARC, our Ukrainian Emergency Art Fund, and different other funds who appeared and then disappeared, it somehow helped to secure and then support development of that complicated, in a good way, ecosystem of Ukrainian art and artists. And as Julie suggested, I would like now to talk with Anaïs, who is patiently listening to us from UNESCO headquarters in Paris. Anaïs, let's start with your vision or your model of that metaphor that I asked for.
Thank you so much, Illia. I'm really happy to be here, really honored to be here also with other very esteemed panelists and partners. So just to say a few words about myself, as you said, I work at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris. I currently coordinate our Heritage Emergency Fund that supports the protection of culture during emergencies defined as, conflicts or also disasters. And we support culture in all its domains, from cultural heritage to, as is the topic of today's discussion, creativity and artists and cultural professionals. And previously, I also worked for the UNESCO Ashburg program for artists and cultural professionals that was entirely dedicated on supporting artistic freedom, the status of the artists worldwide, including in emergency situations. And that's how I became the focal point for our support to artists in Ukraine specifically, and how we got to have such fruitful collaboration also with MOCA. So to answer your question, I'm actually glad to come after the two other panelists, because it's very interesting also to hear their own interpretation of the question and their own thoughts. And when I was thinking about it, I thought mostly of colored pencils, because I used to also want to be an artist. And I spent a lot of time as a child to just draw and color. And I feel like with the state of the world today and how gloomy everything looks, this mostly represents like a way also of escaping, of, trying to continue, even though the future looks gray, to try to have these colors in your hands and try to see beauty, continue seeing beauty, creating beauty as well. And so I think this is what came to my mind, mostly trying to find ways to cope and to escape and to still try to be, hopeful and see beauty in our world that is very, very flawed.
Yeah, thanks. It's in a way, how to say, there is a threat in your metaphor, but also there is a hope. So I think it's an interesting balance. My question to you as UNESCO representative would be of such kind that in Ukraine we have such feelings that some of the challenges that we initially faced in Ukraine now somehow are the challenges that wider world is facing. Again, not naming, but we all know about what also cultural relations, institutions, shutdowns we are, hearing in the news. But regarding UNESCO and perception of UNESCO as also part of UN, one of the most important things that is considered for successful collaboration is a shared temporality. So in a way that, dynamic speed and planning matches, between the, let's say, donor and recipient needs or partners, if we name it in another way. Can you shed a light for us on your work in Heritage Emergency Fund, and maybe within, if you would like to have some examples from UNESCO work in Ukraine, how do you feel that temporality between, again, grabbing one of the words from title of Julii's institution, between risk and between UNESCO? Yeah, how that temporality and link you are feeling from inside?
Thank you so much for your question, Illia. So with the experience of UNESCO, I can say that I think the war in Ukraine was the first time that the organization was intervening in a context while the emergency was ongoing. So while the war was happening, we started our collaboration, our support right at that moment. And basically, the invasion started in February 2022. In March 2022, we already started gathering, our international partners, understanding, mapping the cultural landscape also in Ukraine, and starting right away the consultations to know about the needs on the ground. So it started really pretty quickly. It's not easy, of course, with big organizations like this, big bureaucratic and UN agencies, to always act quickly, taking into consideration that UNESCO is not a humanitarian agency. So it's a challenge, of course, but in the case, of Ukraine and the scale of the war and the emergency, we had this possibility to gather, these consultations and support pretty quickly. Also because, thankfully, the situation really attracted a lot of international solidarity and a lot of attention from UNESCO's member states. So the request came not only from the Secretariat itself to start the consultations, but also from the worries and concerns of UNESCO's member states, who requested very quickly that UNESCO has to be present on the ground with, all sorts of extraordinary sessions of our governing bodies to assess the situation and also assess how we can best support in these challenging times. So as I said, we started really with these consultations to try to understand the needs with regards to artists and culture professionals. If I'm not mistaken, that's how we first got to meet you, Illia, as part of these very important consultations to know how we should focus our support for artists specifically. And since then, the organization has really worked on very different domains of the culture sector. There's been all this work of monitoring, including through, assessments on the ground, but also satellite monitoring. And you mentioned in the guide the data from this monitoring of UNESCO on the damage to cultural infrastructure. So this is something that is done daily, to update and be reactive and understand what is happening on the ground. And also very quickly, some UNESCO staff was dispatched and installed in Kiev, and today, 3 years after, we have a full-fledged UNESCO office that is operating in Kiev. So this helps, to better also understand the needs and to be in touch with the people, the institutions, the organizations, and to be able to improve also the way we collaborate with them. Our support has also been about, cultural heritage, of course, built heritage, what we call movable cultural heritage, so collections, artworks, museums, not only to protect the infrastructure, but also to support the preservation of the collections, their digitization, also their inventory. There's been some efforts also, to train neighboring countries of Ukraine to be aware of this issue, also of the illicit trafficking of Ukrainian cultural goods and artworks, and to have to try to push for these systems of cooperation, cross-border cooperation, in order to track these and prevent them. There's been work also for what we call living heritage, so supporting the cultural traditions of the Ukrainian people, including those who are today refugees in neighboring countries. So how to work with them to ensure that the population, the children can continue living and learning with their own cultural traditions, because as soon as a people is uprooted, of course, their own culture is a threat. The language is a threat. There are so many things that need to be preserved in that sense. And of course, since this is the subject of today's work, our support to artists and cultural professionals. And on that topic specifically, I can say that in the past few years, it has really been a priority of the organization to really highlight that we have to remember about artists and cultural professionals. We can't focus only, on built heritage. Of course, it's extremely important, but I remember just a few months ago, we had an international partners meeting, and one of our partners said, if we protect buildings, but there's no one to actually turn them into living spaces to work and create in them, then what's the point? We have to support also these artists and cultural professionals. And we have been learning also from the experience of UNESCO in the protection of journalists, because there's already such a big program and experience working on the safety of journalists. And we all know, especially people gathered here, that artists are also a vulnerable, an essential group of professionals that are vulnerable, that can be targeted, and hence why they are equally, it's equally needed to support and protect them. So in that sense, we've been working. Please tell me if I'm being too long in my answer, but basically, in the topic of artists and cultural professionals, we worked with Artists at Risk, the NGO, Finnish NGO, to support residencies for artists, both internationally for Ukrainian women that are able to, leave the country and their dependents, but also inside Ukraine for internally displaced artists and their dependents, and all the while supporting the host Ukrainian institutions that receive them in order for them to, be safe and be able to run more sustainably. There's been, of course, the activities that we have been implementing thanks to you, thanks to MOCA. In total, since 2022, we've had this chance to support over 20 creative projects that you curated in all types of domains of creative industries, from operas to exhibitions, etc. And the importance also of this type of activity was to not only support the artists and the institutions, but also the cultural rights of the population, for them to continue accessing culture, to continue participating in cultural life. And maybe since you mentioned solidarity, and how this guide is also a way for Ukrainian artists to share their experiences with other artists around the world who are, living the same things. One interesting thing about solidarity is that also artists in Ukraine have also been supporting psychologists and psychotherapists that have been engaged with UNESCO to create a program to support the mental health of affected communities of children, of teenagers, of veterans. So they have really worked with these therapists to come up with a program that is going to be deployed from this year to support this, the power of art for healing. Also, we have to support art for art, because it's important to have it, whether it's militant or not militant, but also art as a means, to support people. And also, one last thing, and maybe I'll stop here, is that all our work during this war in Ukraine has also been helping us as an organization to understand better what are the needs of artists, of the culture sector, while the emergency is ongoing, and it's helping us a lot also to adapt and implement similar strategies in other emergencies around the world that are unfortunately happening at the same time.
Yeah, thank you, Anaïs. I know it's a challenge to, how to say, in a few minutes, give a description of what UNESCO does. Like 2 points that I think that came to my mind while I was listening to you. So for me, I actually didn't know that the Russian-Ukrainian war is the first war conflict when UNESCO actually acts during the war, not waiting for, the victory or peace, something like that. I think it in a way it's good sign of organization, because as we talked in the start, our usual normality is broken. So in order to be effective and on the spot, institutions need also to reshape. And regarding that, I also remembered the phrase from your colleague Jose Navarro, who is the head of UNESCO hub, cultural hub in Lviv. So when it was some talk about capacity building program in Ukraine, he said, come on, I was here for 6 months. Ukraine doesn't need only capacity building, it needs spots for capacity sharing. So I think it's also something that really corresponds with what we programmed in Navigator. And at this point, I will move back to Ukrainian language to give a word to Max, який стоїчно нас вислуховує
Max
вже.
has been patiently listening to us for an hour, and I hope he's online. Max, are you with us?
Бачу тебе.
I can see you. Great. Great. Max, do you remember the question about metaphor? This question a little bit vague, but instead for myself as what would I take from my home? But home is something, something illusory for me, because a lot of things have changed over these last 3 years. But if I get home, I would take the most, the most like vibrant things, like big trousers, colorful jacket, put it on, and maybe I would take a guitar and play. But guitar, I have a guitar with me. So are you going to play us? No, I'm not going to play guitar today. This is a secret of yours. Okay, I'll play for you. Great. Thank you, Max. I have a question for you. It's a twofold question. First part is the identity. It came to my mind for some reason, quite a pop type, a pop type fact that Leonardo da Vinci, when he wrote a CV about himself, he mentioned that he's architect, he can build fortresses and bridges, and then in the very end he would mention like, I'm a little bit of an artist. And tell me please, how so when you are, if you have any chance to be at your own, to get alone, how do you describe your identity? Because we have a quote from you that in the military you do not recollect that you're an artist, because everybody will think that you're not a useful guy, and you present yourself in a different manner in this navigator. You represent yourself as a manager of big projects. How do you imagine yourself sitting against the background of the Ukrainian flag in the camouflage, uniform? How do you imagine yourself? It's like it's a 50-50 feeling. I feel that I'm a serviceman and an artist at the same time. But quite recently, I came to Uzhgorod and I provide social support to the families of those lost or missing in action. So I'm doing some social work, and only in Uzhgorod, when I started to teach at the Transcarpathian Academy of Arts, I started to identify myself by 20% with an artist, because without that, I was a serviceman. And even these quite frequent concerts, because we played online concerts every month, didn't help me think of me as the artist. But now when I teach art, when we implement some projects and exhibitions, I started to slowly, it touches me, and for 2 or 3 hours I stay, I become an artist, and then my bosses call me and I become a serviceman again. Because you're a serviceman not just 24/7. You're a serviceman 30 hours a day. So I have a lot of positions, I have a lot of duties, so you work all day long. Not everyone on this call were able to read Navigator in detail. Could you please tell us how do you combine the teaching of media art and occupying 3 positions or holding 3 offices in the army? It's very tough. See, but I have to sleep a little. You have official work day, let's say. So after the evening, drill, you can spend 2-3 hours for teaching. This is something that helps you, how to say, not to lose your mind after these 3 years of work, because everyone has fatigue, and those in trenches, and those when you communicate with the families of the servicemen that were lost and that were missing in action, it's very difficult to communicate with them. So I'm trying to combine my social work with the work of the artist. But do you conceal your activities from your military bosses? They're aware of my teaching. So my position means that I need to establish connection with the local authorities. But I told them that I do it free of charge, so they're quite fine with that. So according to our legislation, a serviceman can be a private entrepreneur. It's not prohibited at all. So we can consider it as a kind of a business of mine. But I'm not gaining anything. I'm spending money on this. We rented out a separate room because Transcarpathian Academy of Arts doesn't have enough premises, so we rented a room. We collected money. I'm looking for sponsors and guys who were in Fortunus, and now they're able to provide financial support. They all have So I'm looking for financial support, and people help me. They provide me with equipment, with money. Let me quote you one more time. In our navigator, you mentioned that for Ukrainian artists during the war is the vital thing. The vital thing for Ukrainian artists during the war is to work for victory. So what does it mean for you? It means when you have altruism and you work not for yourself, selfishly, or you understand that you do something in it. For instance, you have a decision. You can decide whether to start this project or that product, and you look at yourself and you weigh this decision and decide whether whether this activity be beneficial for Ukraine. Maybe it sounds, silly, but this is how it is. I know that in Uzhgorod there's a community that lacks this knowledge, lacks this context of contemporary art. In addition to me, we have 14 studio members who they teach online, and Ksenia Malych also teaches free of charge the course of contemporary art. So I look at this and I realize this is something useful. This is something that builds the future of Ukrainian world of art. So at 14 Studio, we decided from the onset, from the very beginning of the war, we will not engage in commercial projects. We will engage only in the project that for the benefit of Ukraine. And so we did one project in Chicago. We had to spend money for equipment, for rental payments, so some technical aspects. But this project was for the sake of Ukraine, and it presented Ukraine the big international platforms. Thank you. I just noted for myself that I'm not sure. It's different. I don't know if something shocking can be inspiring, but during the military service, how do you? So you mentioned that education is about the future, and it's indeed inspiring. So personally, for me, your last answer, the artist should work for the victory, and you as Fortinus, you work for the sake of victory, and through your cultural programs, projects, so it just refuted the first statement that in the army you didn't mention that you're an artist to be not to look useless for the army management. So we exceeded the time allocated for this session, but let me ask a blitz question to Anaïs and Julie.
Really blitz question, which we actually encountered in a lot of Google Forms and different chats that are around your faces in Zoom. So basically, how to interact with you in future, how to find what you're doing, what are you planning, how to find funds, partnership with you, so with UNESCO and Artist at Risk connection. What is the best way? Maybe you have some milestone coming that might be very fruitful for Ukrainian artists, both who are in Ukraine and abroad. Very quick, and then I will pass the microphone to Lisa. and Lisa will do the magic, and then the musical performance will start. Or maybe concert, I don't know.
But maybe somebody will want to ask questions here, not in chat. We will give minute.
But meanwhile, Anaïs, Julie, so how to interact with your institutions?
Shall I start, Julie? Yeah. So to interact with our institutions, we have updates, very regular updates on our webpage. So that is dedicated to UNESCO's action in Ukraine across all sectors in which the organization is mandated to work. So not only culture, but also education, media freedom, etc. So I can put the link there. And maybe one thing to keep an eye on is the UNESCO Lviv Culture Hub. I haven't mentioned it yet, but basically, as we are trying also to combine these urgent actions with more long-term programs, Spain has supported the establishment of a culture hub in Lviv. That was just launched, open formally, either in February or January, but very recently. And this is aimed at being really a living space for artists and cultural professionals from across Ukraine, for exhibitions, talks, workshops, also grants and residencies. So I'll put also the link there, and don't hesitate also to reach out and look on potential collaborations with that hub.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, and thank you, Anaïs, for sharing those wonderful resources. I have added a link earlier on our website, and I'll do it again in case other people have just joined and not have it. So you can reach us on our website. We have an intake form for artists and cultural workers at risk, where we will, our team, our protection team will get back to artists who are facing danger and cultural workers in a timely manner. Those emergency resilience grants that I mentioned are on these pages as well, on the Protect. And also, I will be dismissed to not mention the safety guide that we have issued in 2021, and the resource that we are launching today are kind of spanning from the safety guide for artists. We found that really critical on one of the things that have been shared today, how, those localized resources are so important. The safety guide that we released in 2021 is very large, very holistic, and look at how to navigate the risk, prepare an escape plan, finding resources, but at a very large, holistic, international level. And I think when we all wanted to support and stand for Ukrainian artists, we realized very quickly that those type of resources were not existing, and in the context of Ukraine and in context of this war. And that's why we were, really collaborating with MOCA, with Lisa and the wonderful team at MOCA to enable expert like MOCA to create this guide and handbook for Ukrainian artists. So I think this is where you can find us. We are on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube, LinkedIn. Our handle is at Artists at Risk. I'll put it on also on this chat, and also I will really welcome all of you and invite all of you to subscribe to our newsletter, because I think that's the easiest way to receive our updates, and on top of following us on social media. But thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So as a conclusion, it was a great pleasure for me. Hope for you too, to have discussion with Alim, Julie, Anaïs, and Max. This is not the end. And I give a floor to Lisa to do her magic and what happened next.
Yeah, thank you, Illia. I'll switch to Ukrainian now. Так, у нас друга частина нашої презентації, як найбільш художня.
So the second part of our presentation is the more artistic part of it, is the little online concert that Max that prepared together with Media Club community. Okay. So let me do a little remark that when we were preparing the interview for our guide, he mentioned that one of the ways of continuing the cultural practice as the serviceman today is doing the online concerts that he manages as the military. He gives orders to his colleagues and his colleagues on the sides of the monitors or display screens, but they execute these orders. So this is some kind of, it mirrors his identity as the serviceman. But it was very important for us to invite Max as the artist today and continue this conversation on how the artist should live in Ukraine. And we want to finish this conversation with an art by creating art and for contemplating this art. So without any further ado, I'm giving the floor to Max and Media Club, and I encourage every one of you to enjoy this concert and have a good evening.
Max, передаю вам.
The floor is yours.
Дякую.
Ми готові, ми починаємо.
We're ready to start.
Зараз поки якась у нас технічна затримка, хотів би сказати, що
Meanwhile, we are
всі виконавці
turning on
цього
these
музичного
keys.
онлайн-перформансу, вони
So
знаходяться
the
по різним
performers
куточкам нашої планети.
are now
І
scattered around
за
their
допомогою,
planet,
медіа,
and
технологій
with
ми
the
все
media
разом
technologies,
поєднуємося.
we managed to
Цей
combine
концерт
all of the
онлайн.
pieces into
От,
one
він,
performance.
не є тобто, всі виконавці знаходяться
All
онлайн,
of the
але
performers are online, but the presentation
місці. Зараз це місце
is available at one place. Now it's Zoom. And we would like to present you this concert. It's not a concert as it is, but it's rather the preparation to the Victory Day. For 3 years, we have been preparing ourselves, and I hope that one day we will be ready to perform the real concert. Let's start.
Добре. Все, я готовий. Бажаю здоров'я. Я капітан Абрамов, позивний робот. Даю наказ починати.
Івченка, ви готові? Якщо так, можете починати. Початок звукових маніпуляцій буду вважати за позитивну відповідь. Майер. Наказую зробити доповідь, хто такий Медіаклаб, а також про те, де знаходиться особовий склад. Полянського. Наказую починати. Наказую Георгію Потопальському на основі даних, що пропонує Майер, згенерувати свою частину, використовуючи програми забезпечення Максами Speed-Jitter. Час виконання наказу 1 хвилина. Контроль за виконанням наказу покласти на відповідального за ритмічну частину Потопальського. Тентюк, вступайте та додайте масивності у вашому виконанню. Потопальський, ваша пропозиція стосовно використання бочки була прийнята. Івченка зробить пропозицію щодо вашого вкладу в роботу особового складу. Чекаю відповідь впродовж 1 хвилини.
Я розумію, зв'язок увірвався. Макс, ти з нами зараз?
Хотілося б почути роботу Потопальського. Наказую вам змінити свою музичну партію. Дмитро Тентюк, додайте ритмічну частину до вашого виконання. Майер наказує приєднатись до нас після того, як Тентюк зробить свою пропозицію. Буду чекати звукову пропозицію від вас. Орієнтуйтесь по приборам. Тентюк, зважаючи на почуте, дозволяє розвинути свою звукову пропозицію щодо нашого виконання. Чекає від вас звукової відповіді. Пропозиція від Полянського отримана. Чекаю на ускладнену звукову пропозицію від Потопальського. Підтвердить отримання наказу. Наказую Потопальському та Івченка, використовуючи отримані дані, ускладнити роботу з ритмом. Час виконання наказу негайно. Майер, дивлячись на зробне, чекаю на ускладнену звукову пропозицію від вас. Полянського, зробить вашу партію простою та об'ємною. Наступний наказ стосується усього особового складу, окрім партії Полянської та Майер. Потопальський, Тентюк та Івченко, згідно плану, наказую вам зробити паузу на 1 хвилину. Це стосується як низькочастотної, так і ритмічної складової, після чого продовжити грати музику до подальшого розпорядження. Час виконання наказу негайно. Особовий склад, що не задіяний зараз, наказую вам на рахунок 3 повернутися до виконання своїх посадових обов'язків. Особливо це стосується Тентюка. наступ на вал продовжувати з більшою рішучістю та напором. Рахую. 1. 2. 3. 'Повторюю, наступ на вал продовжувати з більшою рішучістю та напором. Підготуйтесь до виконання завдання. Наказую через хвилину почати послідовно зменшувати гучність, поки наша присутність не стане повністю непомітна. Дякую всім за гарне виконання завдання. Слава Україні!
Героям слава. Дякую вам дуже.
Дякуємо всім. І якщо будуть якісь відгуки, то пишіть нам.
Люди, на всі контакти, які знайдете. MOCA.org.ua, УМКА, АРК, ЮНЕСКО, Український інститут. Дякуємо.
Дякуємо.
На все добре.